Thanks for joining us. Today we're tackling one of the most critical challenges facing every Canadian SMB, the workforce and skill shortages. You feel it, we feel it, the talent is scarce and the demand for skilled people is only rising. Now, to help us understand how to turn this challenge into a competitive advantage, we're joined by one of the foremost voices in Canadian industry, Chris Gardner. Chris is the president and the CEO of the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, the ICBA, which has grown to become the largest construction association in Canada. As a fierce advocate for Canadian business, he spends his time directly addressing the issues impacting your growth, particularly the shortage of people in the skilled trades and the need for new training options. His work is focused squarely on the intersection of the economy, labor, and policy, which gives him incredible insight into exactly what you can do today to secure the talent your business needs for tomorrow. Please welcome to the show, Chris Gardner. Chris, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Great. Thank you for having me on the show. Pleasure to be here.
Listen, your organization represents such an integral part of our economy. And I want to get, at the start anyway, let's get a little bit of a state of play. You know, how competitive our industry is here in British Columbia with the rest of the country, with the rest of North America. And fill me in. Give us a little bit of an overview on how things are.
Yeah, well, first, at ICBA, this is our 50th year. We started in 1975 in a small town in Trail, British Columbia. We've grown across BC, expanded to Alberta, and now we're the largest construction association in Canada. So when you think about the construction industry, there's a couple of ways to think about the size and the importance of it. One is just construction directly is about 10% of BC's GDP. But when you add in real estate development and the associated industries, that's another 18%. So we're getting close to 30% of BC's economy is related to construction and building in some way or another. And right now, when you think of construction, there's some headwinds. On the residential side, we've run into, we're now going over a cliff. What was an affordability crisis in terms of housing has now become a jobs crisis. And we're starting to see layoffs of electricians and plumbers and carpenters at a pace that we haven't seen since the 1990s. So that side of construction is very challenged. The sort of industrial, institutional, road building infrastructure side is still doing well. But there's a lot of macro headwinds that are facing the industry and the economy.
It's been flipped on its head.
Yeah.
And not so long ago, we were talking about labor shortages and the inability to get that kind of skilled help to build. What are some of the reasons here?
Well, if you go back to your point 2 years ago, if I had said to a contractor, I've got 5 carpenters or electricians or plumbers, they would have been on a job site the next day. And so now we're getting to a point where a lot of these companies, because projects have been delayed or postponed, and they've worked through the projects that they've been building. So as they come to completion, the next project isn't proceeding, and so that's forcing layoffs. And so if you think of construction, there's about 250,000 people working in construction at the beginning of this year. There's fewer now because we've had layoffs. So we've probably lost 10 to 15,000 jobs already this year. And that number is going to accelerate, primarily in the residential side. But it affects lots of different companies in different ways. And then you think of construction from the perspective of the demographic profile. About 20% of the construction workforce is 55 or older.
Oh.
So, and the average age of retirement in construction is 60. It's not 65. So over the next 5 years, we're going to lose an awful lot of leadership experience and expertise. So, roughly around 40,000 people will be retiring.
I want to talk about that transition, the demography of the industry in a sec. But it sounds as if there's also a competitiveness issue here in British Columbia, that it's not simply a matter of headwinds, macroeconomic headwinds, that there's also something that we're doing to ourselves. I mean, what do you feel that is?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. If you just look at, when you talk about productivity and innovation, it's usually in the context from economists like output per worker, output per hour. And so construction is probably in the middle of the pack if you look at all the sectors of our economy. I do think it gets an unfair reputation for not being innovative. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the metric I like to use is because so much of construction is the discussions have revolved around housing. So in 1972 in Canada, we built about 240,000 homes. We will build fewer homes this year. We'll build about 230,000 homes. So we're building fewer homes 2 generations later. So why is that? Why haven't we been able to put more supply onto the market? Well, it's primarily self-inflicted. It's a regulatory process. We have, basically compounded regulation after regulation after regulation and cost and process and complex building codes. We stacked them all up. So now it takes 4 to 6 years to get a major housing project approved in the Lower Mainland, and the regulatory burden is increasing. It's not decreasing, and that's one of the big challenges. And so it takes a lot longer. It's more complicated and it's more costly.
I always like it as an interviewer when the answers stack up some new questions for me right away. So listen, we're supposed to try to build 500,000 houses in this country. We haven't built more than about half that in any 1 year, I think.
That's correct.
270,000, I think, is our maximum.
That was probably the high water mark.
Can we build 500,000?
Can we build 500,000 in 10 or 15 years? That's possible if we do lots of things right. Are we going to build, right now, are we going to double the home building that's going on in the country? No, we aren't. We aren't going to get there. Mark Carney's saying 500,000 homes. Premier David Eby is saying he wants to build 300,000 middle-class homes. We aren't going to hit those numbers. And because we're looking at it the wrong way. Elected officials, one of the big challenges that builders face is that you've got 3 levels of government. Now, primarily it's a city, it's local government that is in control of the permitting process.
Says yes or no, right.
Yeah, so those are and they also are responsible for development cost charges and community amenity fees, and then Metro Vancouver layers on their DCC. So a lot of this is local level, but the province has a role to play. And a significant role, and then federally less so. But the challenge is, if you go back 2 years ago, then Prime Minister Trudeau decided to bring leaders from across the country together in Ottawa for a national summit because so much was going wrong. The summit was about auto theft. We've never had a summit on housing and housing affordability. And we haven't even had one provincially. David Eby hasn't convened his housing minister and local mayors and builders. Builders are often left out of the equation.
What do you think's holding it back? I mean, why wouldn't you do this? Is it just that there'd be too much acrimony in the room and you wouldn't get anything done? It would be a big kvetching session? Or
I think sometimes government feels they've got all the answers. And so, Mark Carney will go off in one direction and David Eby will go off in another direction. The mayors go off in their different directions. And all of this is piecemeal. Very little collaboration, very little coordination. And so as a result, we all pay a price for that. And so, Surrey might do something that's really interesting, but it's just Surrey. And then Burnaby might propose something different in a different area that's kind of interesting. But again, it's just Burnaby. There's no coordination, collaboration across and between cities and the province. And that hurts us all. And then if you think of it, when the Premier says, well, the private sector's failed to build enough housing, so we're going to get into the business of building housing. The reality is the province only puts about 5% of total housing stock onto the market.
Right.
It is the private sector that will deliver the homes that we need. The challenges are often left out of the equation. And so if you want to know how to build faster, how to build more, and how to build affordably, which I think is really one of the central challenges we're facing in our economy, whether that's infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, bridges, ports, airports, or homes, hospitals, and schools. Ask builders. You bring a contractor to the table, they will tell you, I have a list of as long as their arm about things that are holding them up, codes that don't make sense, regulations that impede building and innovation. And they're left out of the equation. So ministers run around and they have lists and they have this program and that program. And those programs are often expensive and they don't deliver the homes that we need. And you can see it, the proof's in the pudding. We can see it in the numbers.
Almost every week now, there's another project that I read about that is that's being shuttered or abandoned or whatever. And this gives us an opportunity to segue into the issue around labor. I presume that in all of this, we're seeing a flight of skilled trades to other jurisdictions where, in fact, they can build. They can build. Are we losing British Columbians in this sector?
Yeah, the most recent data on this came in 2023, where you had 70,000 British Columbians leave BC, and half of them went to Alberta. And so why did they go to Alberta? Well, for the average price of a home in Metro Vancouver, you can buy 2 homes in Calgary or 3 homes in Edmonton. So you got cheaper housing, lower taxes, and the same or higher wages. So if you're in your 30s, what's not to like about that equation? And so it's a magnet that's taking people out of this market into that market. And as we slow down, there's that sort of like, well, I don't have a job here, I don't have opportunities here, I'm going to go to Alberta. In this case, they don't all go to Alberta, but Alberta is certainly a big draw. And so the challenge, I think, sometimes politicians forget about building a strong competitive economy that is open for investment and seen to be open for investment. It's not good enough to have a minister or the premier run around and say, yeah, we're open for investment, when in fact the regulatory regime says something else. So we've got to focus on putting the conditions in place that will attract investment across the economy, whether that's manufacturing or mining or our energy sector, LNG, home building, like all of those conditions need the right regulatory framework, a tax framework, to be able to build a solid economic foundation for prosperity so young people see an opportunity to stay here, build their careers, and build their families.
Just stepping in for a moment to recognize our sponsor, Sprague's Group. Canadian small businesses are facing challenges like never before, and this is why Sprague's Group developed Vistera. It's a subscription-based support package. It gives you immediate access to senior HR, legal, financial, and communications expertise at a fraction of the cost of a full-time hire. Vistera is designed to give you the framework and guidance you need to build a stronger, more efficient business without the high overhead. Click the link in our show notes to learn more about what Vistera can do for your business. Now back to the episode.
Somebody though pointed out the other day that interest rate or interest payments now on our debt are almost becoming a new program. Bumping classrooms, bumping clinics, bumping all kinds of other things out of the economy. Are we able to dig ourselves out of this hole, do you think?
Well, I think yes, if we have elected officials who are willing to understand that this is a time for bold ideas and new thinking, different approaches. It's not about a new program. It's about sitting down with builders and different levels of government saying, okay, what do we need to do differently? Where can the province play, do something differently? And I think there is a role where the province can play, they have an important role to play, and that is funding municipal infrastructure. When you talk to local officials, they will say, we have no choice but to increase development cost charges and property taxes because we need to pay for more water and sewer and the other infrastructure we need that comes along with building new homes.
Yes.
And up until now, their model has been, and you'll hear this a lot, growth pays for growth, which means all of the cost of that new infrastructure is placed on the new home buyers. That model is broken. It doesn't work. It actually doesn't make any sense. So the province can play a role. Rather than rolling out lists and rolling out all kinds of programs and regulations, sit down with the cities and say, we're going to be a partner in funding municipal infrastructure, but in return, you need to do your part in approving projects faster and freezing or lowering DCCs to take some of the costs out of construction. That's the kind of partnership and innovation that we really, the new thinking that we need. As it relates to City Hall, one of the things that's very frustrating is that there's too much decisions that are made on any project in City Hall. So you get builders and developers, and they hire expert architects and engineers and consultants, and they put together these very complicated packages. Then they submit them to City Hall. And that's where good projects go to die. They get caught in a maze of red tape and regulation with underworked staff, inexperienced staff, and that's why it takes so long. So if you've got these world-class leading consultants and engineers and advisors putting these packages, well, the process should be, okay, you've assembled a great team, you're within the building code, start building, and we'll come along and inspect along the way. Don't have them review the entire package again. And what's the point? So we've got to take some of that decision-making out of City Hall.
Yeah, it always seems to me, too, that the experienced builder doesn't get any kind of a break at City Hall, where where you could say, Chris, your company's done 75 different projects over the years.
Right.
The 76th one, you go right ahead.
Right.
We may come and see it along the way, but get going.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't catch those breaks as industries.
No, and that's exactly right. And there's so many different layers of rules and regulations that ensure that what is being built so that no one's, there's no life safety issues.
Yeah.
You've got, WorkSafe BC regulations, you've got building codes. So there's more than enough regulations, and they should be given a freer hand to build, but then have regular inspections and check-ins. So get it out of City Hall. City Hall and Metro Vancouver and the province of British Columbia, for that matter, their procurement teams are really contract administrators. They aren't filled with people who've worked for builders in construction for 10, 15, 20 years and then decided to go into government. There are people who started their careers in government and have come up within government. And so they're very good at administering a contract, moving paper around.
But they don't have a grasp of the reality practically.
That's right.
I want to talk a bit about, though, the labor supply in this case, because it wasn't so long ago that we were in this province looking at the necessity of about 1 in 6 graduates going into the trades, and we were well behind that. Where are we now in terms of grooming the next generation of contractor to get into this with the skills that are necessary? Is the gap still quite wide apart?
Yeah, it is. It's quite. We have not done a great job of positioning a career in the trades as an entrepreneurial opportunity.
Yeah.
Every builder, every contractor that you can think of was started by an individual, a family. It could be second generation, third generation. Some of the biggest names in construction in this country started that way. But we don't. If someone's in high school and saying, "I want to start a business," most high school counselors aren't going to say, "Go to a technical school, learn a trade, get some experience, and become a contractor." They're going to say, "Go to university, study accounting, study business, and then get into business." And so we miss an opportunity to highlight the exciting opportunities in construction.
Is it just the stigma? Is there a stigma there?
I think there's partly a stigma, but partly just a lack of understanding and really thinking about what construction is.
Right.
Construction is also a technology story.
It definitely is.
There's $5 billion a year invested in software applications for technology in North America. So if young people are interested in technology, it's changed the way we design and build buildings. You want to, work in logistics, in supply chains, understand how technology can help mobilize people and equipment. There's a story and there's a career for you in construction. And so these are highly skilled, high-paying, family-supporting, community-building jobs that we do not raise a flag in high school and say, this is not a second choice or a third choice. This is equal to going to a university.
And isn't it actually a speedier upward mobility in terms of your income and then your capacity eventually to retire?
Yeah, it's a faster track to employment. It's a faster track to higher wages and less student debt along the way. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of reasons to be considering the trades, but we don't market it. We don't, in a way, sell it to young people so it's appealing. And so when grade 12 students in British Columbia leave high school, only 2% of them that next year after high school will go into the trades. And then over the next 10 years, that number will move up to close to 10%. And why is that? Well, people are trying to figure out what they're going to do in life. They may go to a university, they may travel, and then they may start working part-time, say, I really like construction. So they sort of fall into it by accident, not by design, and they lose some time along the way. But 2% coming out of a high school going into construction, that is, I would say, borders on an appalling number.
Yeah.
The system is really, the high school system has been really geared towards getting people into universities and not into a trades training stream.
Now, for some time, of course, the industry has filled some of that gap with people from other countries who have come here to do this. Now we've got curtailing of these programs. And what are you already experiencing in the industry around some of the difficulties that are ensuing as a result of some of the tapering of the number of people who can come to the country?
Well, our immigration system is interesting. If you just think of British Columbia from 2021 to now, every single year, forgetting immigration, natural deaths have exceeded natural births. So the population profile in Britain is declining, aging and declining. And so we need immigration. And then if you look at, there's two streams of immigrants, really. There's permanent and temporary. On the permanent side, Canada last year took in about 500,000. The federal government's moving that number down. Will probably be over 400,000 this year. Won't go down as low as they want. But in that group, we've got less than 5% going into the construction trades. And then on the temporary side, that's where you got international foreign students, temporary foreign workers, and asylum seekers. That stream is primarily a low-skilled stream. We've done a very poor job of saying, you know what, if we look at our economy, we need doctors, nurses, long-term care aides, we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need carpenters, let's bring them in. We've basically focused on low-skilled workers. And so when you bring in those workers, where do they primarily end up? They end up in retail, restaurants.
Service industry.
That's right. That's where they end up. They get paid minimum wage. So we have now effectively what we've done for some companies, they built a service model on bringing in temporary foreign workers, paying a minimum wage for a year or two, and then sending them back. So what we're doing is we're working against ourselves. What we should be saying to those companies is invest in technology, innovate, so you can do things with fewer workers, but pay those workers more money. Create exciting opportunities because you're getting more money, you're working with technology, and we're being innovative. But we've made it easy for them to just hire folks from other countries, pay them minimum wage. And for where you need higher skilled workers, we don't bring in as many as we need. And then we've got the whole credentials recognition issue.
Right.
We can. That's a long story, but it's a challenge, and we've got to figure it out and get it right because we have an aging population and we've got declining natural births. So we have to get the immigration question right.
I remember speaking to you a number of years back where you told your personal story, and you got out ahead, I thought, of what a lot of other industries have gotten into, which is examining the importance of emotional health in the workplace and addressing it. And now you've got a program that I was reading about the other day that is 300,000 people that you now have under an umbrella of really looking into and addressing some of those emotional health challenges that people have day by day. It's important work, and you're to be commended, I think, for your leadership on it. What impact do you think it's starting to have now, in terms of changing attitudes among employers and employees about the value of this?
Well, I think we've come a long way, and we know in the construction industry it's kind of like, if you think of professional sports like NHL or NFL football or CFL football, it's male dominated. All the players are male. And construction, when you go to a job site, you're still going to see over 90% of the people on the site are male. And that culture can be very hard driving. We've got to meet the deadline. We've got to meet schedule. We've got to get the job done. And if you're going to have a problem, do it after work or on the weekend. And so the focus of our program was really just to have people feel more comfortable, to start a conversation, say, hey, I'm struggling a bit, I'm having a challenge here, and it could be mental health that's triggered by all kinds of things, a medical diagnosis, a divorce, financial challenges, pressure at work, a whole host of things can trigger this. And so we wanted to make it more comfortable for people to say, I'm struggling, I need some help. And for the person who's having that conversation on the other side to say, we've got resources, there is a program, there is help. So coming out of COVID, and we have about 300,000 people on one of our health and dental plans, we looked at the data and we saw on every single health plan, in terms of the drugs that doctors prescribe, the number one category in every single plan were drugs for ADHD, depression, and anxiety. And it was a stunning revelation. So we said, we're going to create a program to start this conversation, to remove the stigma. And so we offer it free. We rolled it out in the summer of 2021. And we've now had 20,000 people go through the program. And when you go through the program, and And then what we're seeing now is people saying, it's easy to have that conversation, I'm struggling now, I need help. Now the trick now is the availability of resources to help folks.
Yeah.
So what we're noticing is that, we're knocking on the door and thinking of creative ways to get people in front of counselors and psychologists and other professionals to help them. That's a little bit of a challenge. Our system hasn't been set up for the numbers of people who need this help, but I think we've made a lot of progress. Still lots of work to do.
Yeah. When you think of it, though, the other side of it, the physical side of this, we also don't count the construction worker as one of the principal victims of the opioid crisis, and what that has done. And I wonder whether you think that, to some degree, understanding what has happened here with people who have chronic injury, chronic pain, whether that has illuminated for society the kind of breadth of the crisis that we're in.
Yeah, British Columbia declared a state of emergency related to the opioid crisis in 2016, and you wonder, what did that really mean, given where we are today? It doesn't seem to have gotten much better. And in fact, if you walk around most larger cities and towns in British Columbia, you're seeing the devastating impact of that every single day. And so we are in a situation where we haven't figured that out. And if you travel to other cities, what always strikes me is that outside of North America, other folks seem to have dealt with it in a different way. What do
you think they're doing that we're not?
I don't know the answer to that. But here's what I don't think is I find shocking that whether it's, and this I think is a lack of political leadership at all three levels, federal, provincial, and local. But if you walk around neighborhoods and you see people, we seem to find it acceptable, or at least we're willing to accept that those people are destroying their lives. Many of them don't have the capacity to make a decision that's in their best interests. So they are dying in front of us, and it's just a matter of time. It could be months, could be years, but they've destroyed their lives, and we're not doing anything to help. And I just can't think like every time you turn around, there will be some politician that says, well, we're funding this program or we're funding that program. And clearly what we're doing is not working. It is not working. And so we've got to do something different. I don't know what that is, but we've got to do something different.
Yeah. I want to conclude with asking you for a little bit of of Chris Gardner's wish list for mayors, premiers, federal leaders. If you could, wave the wand.
Right.
What would you be looking for right now in order to make a difference that isn't also taking us way off on what we know are important guardrails for public finances and the economy? What do you think is achievable that isn't going to take us off track terribly?
Well, I think the first of all is collaboration and coordination. The three levels are going to have to work more closely together. They have to bring in industry as a partner. They've done a very poor job of that. Builders know where the roadblocks are, where the costs are. We have to simplify building codes and look at building codes as a way to take cost out of construction, not add costs. And what we've tended to do is just add another regulation. It all sounds good in isolation, but the cumulative effect of all those regulations is enormous amount of cost. And then we have to find new ways to fund municipal infrastructure. We had an enormous deficit. How do we do that? How do we do that creatively to find new sources of capital to build the infrastructure that we so desperately need for our growing communities? So I think if we started doing those four things, we would be heading in a more positive direction than we are right now. Yeah.
It's always good to talk to you, and you bring lots of great ideas to the table. And thanks so much for your time today.
Great, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
And that's our SMB report this time. I'm Kirk LaPointe. I hope you've taken away some actionable insights today, something you can apply to your business right now to make it stronger, smarter, more efficient. Remember, the goal of the show is to demystify the future of business for Canadian SMBs. And so we're here to help you navigate the market shifts so that you can stay ahead of the curve, not just chase it. To ensure you don't miss any of our upcoming conversations with top experts, make sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We also want to hear from you. So what are the challenges that you have right now that you're facing in your business? And which part of the future keeps you up at night? Send us your questions and topic ideas through our website or through social channels. Your insights are going to help us shape this playbook for the entire Canadian SMB community. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Join us again next time for another deep dive into the trends and tools shaping Canadian business. Until then, I'm Kirk LaPointe, and this has been the SMB Report.